We're joined by Matt Rutherford with shootclay.co.uk. Over there in the United Kingdom, Matt, you've had the information that we were all over last night about this story in the London Olympics. Great work, by the way, and thank you for being on NRA News.
Yeah, no problem at all. Great, good to meet you guys.
So let's start. Let's set the groundwork, how this story developed and where it came from, and what you learned and when you learned it.
Yeah, so I was alerted to the story by a Twitter post from one of our UK pistol shooters, air pistol shooters, who said that there was she'd been asked to quote, or she'd been asked to provide a quote regarding this removal of the shooting sports from the ticket giveaway. And I went online and found an article on a London evening newspaper, the London Evening Standard, which is it's a free newspaper that's distributed in London, but is quite a well-respected and well-established newspaper. And there was quite a large post about it was kind of headlined as "Children Banned from Shooting Events," which wasn't strictly the case. And I think we have to be careful not to slip into sensationalising the issue, but effectively, the story was captured on the London Evening Standard newspaper. So we reblogged that information fairly quickly because we think that Shoot Clay readers want to know about Olympic sports and attendance of the Olympic sports in London.
Now, you were the first one. Cameron found this information about things, about this going on. Tell me, we'll talk about how you got your information and how you ran with that. But first, what was the reaction to the story and reaction from you and other people in the shooting community? Yeah,
I mean, clearly, the Shoot Clay team, myself and my partner run Shoot Clay, we're firmly behind the Olympics. We're excited that they're coming. We think that although there have been some errors along the way, or some errors that we believe that have happened along the way in terms of the legacy that the Olympic Games will provide to the shooting community, we are squarely behind our athletes and our shooters and the sport that we love and enjoy. And in fact, on Shoot Clay, we cover a lot of the events that are leading up to the Olympics, and we live blog some of the ISSF events, which are the medal qualification events that are happening across the world. We were saddened to see that children could be excluded from the giveaway of tickets. So the process will be that about 125,000 tickets have been held back to be given away to school children in order to encourage them to enjoy the Olympic events and be the grassroots or the next wave of athletes from the UK. And to have the shooting sports omitted from that seemed unfair to us. And it seemed like a very curious decision as well, because it didn't seem to make much sense when you set it against all of the other sports that are in the Olympics and the Olympic ideal as well.
Wow.
Matt, to follow up on your blog posting, we are also, you say here, you're puzzled by the statement. We're puzzled too, because we don't know if it was a change of policy. It says you'd like to understand which schools were consulted. You also have your email into Mayor Boris Johnson, who is probably against, you have a very anti-gun country to begin with, and Boris Johnson probably is the gold medalist when it comes to the hatred of guns over there. Are you finding anything more? Are you getting more information? Are you finding any satisfaction in your questions?
So we've had no response from Mayor Johnson yet, and it should be pointed out that Boris Johnson is from the right of the house, the right end of politics. So I don't think he's certainly not a bleeding heart liberal, and I think there's even some history of him having been a game shot in the past, a wing shooter in the past. But I think. We haven't had any response from our open letter yet, so that was our immediate response to the post. I started reading around. I certainly started reading the responses to the Evening Standard blog post, and then also some responses to friends that I have across the community and contacts I have across the community who were all very critical of the decision to remove these sports. And I thought, well, the best way to approach this would be to politely ask Mayor Johnson to clarify his position and to tell us exactly what was wrong here, tell us exactly why these sports would be removed, and also to explain the shooting community. And I'm no representative of the entire shooting community. I'm a citizen journalist, but to ask him to clarify his position and explain to us what the situation was. Why would you remove these sports from the giveaway? How is this going to contribute to the legacy of the Olympics in London and in the UK and Team GB? How is this going to make the British athletes feel? And we've had some good success in clay shooting and pistol shooting over recent years. And finally, just to help us understand the rationale behind the decision that says, well, tickets to the boxing would still be included.
Right, and judo.
Fencing would still be included. And even the modern pentathlon, where pistol shooting is a component sport of the five sports in the pentathlon, that would still be included. But trap shooting, skeet shooting, and pistol shooting and rifle shooting would not be included. It made no sense to us, and so we asked them the question.
Wanted to ask you also, Matt, there's in the original Evening Standard article, there was a quote by a man named Danny Bryan, who's the founder of Communities Against Gun and Knife Crime. Now, here in the United States, we have a lot of gun control organizations, but there's no organization here that's opposed to gun and knife crime. Is knife crime a big issue there in your country?
Well, I think there's there is an issue with violent crime in our cities, in our urban environments, and you know, none of us support criminal use of weapons, either guns or knives. I mean, you know, none of us support that, and it would be a folly to it will be a folly for us to sort of ignore the fact that needs to be fixed and that needs to be tackled. I don't think, and as a supporter of shooting sports and of sporting clays and clay shooting in the UK, I do not believe that stopping children watching clay shooting or stopping children watch air pistol shooting at the Olympics is going to in any way contribute to that aim. And so, you know, we do have a problem. It needs to be addressed, but this isn't going to do it.
Yeah, the other irony to me is that Mr. Bryan is with these Communities Against Gun and Knife Crime. He said we shouldn't glorify guns, but to me, an AP in fencing is a big sword, which is a big knife. So it just really doesn't. There's really just a lack of logic when it comes to that argument.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think you know, if you extrapolate the argument, then you know there's a whole bunch of sports that we could omit from this, and you know, you could justify them with the same sort of flawed logic. I think the curious thing for me is that we are creating a spurious connection, you know, a really incorrect connection between criminals that misuse weapons and athletes that use weapons safely and to a high degree of discipline and performance.
Want to get back, Matt, to speaking with Matt Rutherford with Shoot Clay in the United Kingdom, and wanted to get back to, no matter what happened, the result of this story was a good result because this was reversed. We can go back and forth and we discuss whether it was pressure or whatever. But what I want to get back to, Matt, is that the psychology of you as a shooter and your fellow shooters and the other folks who enjoy the shooting sports over there. You know, first of all, you know, it's tough for you guys, the Olympic guys, just to train over there because of gun bans and the like. And then with this, it's like, you know, you guys are really treated like, you know, second or third class citizens over there. Does that get you down after a while?
A little bit. I mean, I think it's important not to overstate the situation. I mean, I and many thousands of clay shooters, sporting clay shooters, are free to go out with our shotguns. My shotgun's sitting in a safe behind me here in my office, and we're able to go out clay shooting, you know, every weekend, any day of the week. We have to have a license. It's controlled, and you do have some involvement in the police, with the police before you are able to own your shotgun. You can't just go and buy one at the supermarket or a gun shop. So there are some controls, but we are able to go and shoot, and we are free to shoot. There's laws and there's controls on where shoots can be held and all those kind of things. And also we have a high number of children and under 16s that join us at shoots, and you can go to any one of the many country fairs and game fairs that happen in the UK all the way through the summer, and you'll see lots of children there. And in fact, every shoot that I go to, if I go on a Sunday morning, I often see teenagers, and I have a young son as well, who I've taken out with me shooting, and will learn to shoot when he gets a little bit older. So I think we have to be careful not to overstate the issue. I'm not advocating that we remove our gun controls. I'd like to see in some cases, I'd like to see them tightened up. I'd like to see some safety coming in before people are allowed to own guns. But on the same token, I'd also like to encourage people the responsible use of handguns, the responsible use of guns in the UK. And currently, we don't have a facility to own a gun for home protection or for self-protection or even go range shooting with a handgun or a pistol in the same way that you guys do. And I enjoy that when I come to the US, by the way. I visit the US quite often, and I often take a trip to a range when I'm there just so that I can, shoot some guns that I wouldn't otherwise see in the UK.
Well, it's good to hear that you have young people out there and you can pass on the shooting sports, and then what's going to happen is at the Olympics as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We're very pleased. We're still looking for clarification. We'd really like to know if this was a reversal of a decision or whether the original story was just made up or misreported or whatever, because we have no idea of that. And we're still seeking clarification. I mean, when we received an automated response from Mayor Johnson, which said that we'll get back to you within 20 days. So I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know if he's even going to respond to me, but we will see. And we will continue to support, the Olympic Games, the shooting sports at the Olympic Games, and particularly our athletes, but also the global village of athletes that will be visiting London to shoot in our games as well.
Matt, one final question, a little, a different topic here. We, everyone around the world saw the tragedy of what happened in London with the riots, and there was a lot of discussion here in this country about. We have the Second Amendment here. We have the right to defend ourselves. You guys over there, you don't have the right to defend yourselves as much. And we saw the anecdotal stories about how the Amazon UK site, there was like a 5,000 increase in purchase in baseball bats and cricket bats, just anything for self-defense. As someone who was there and someone who lives this every day, do you think that the London riots would have happened or changed or finished differently had you had the rights to self-defense that we enjoy here in the United States?
It's a very difficult situation. I'm certainly not a bleeding heart liberal, and I advocate I advocate defence where necessary and self-defense where necessary, and giving people the right to self-defend. However, I think these riots would have happened anyway, and I think that the outcome of the riots would have been far more tragic if there'd been more guns around. I think, our police have much more or much greater access to guns than they had, say, 15, 20 years ago in the UK. But nobody really wants to see us shooting rioters on the streets. We also don't want rioters on the streets. That's absolutely, and I think we need to address many of the wider issues that are kind of making people go out into the streets and rioting, not least of which should be that people should be scared to do that stuff, not just because of guns, but because of, the penalties for doing these things and the penalties for going out in the streets and looting and rioting. There are plenty of illegal guns on the streets of London and Manchester and Liverpool and our major cities right across the UK. I wouldn't want to see more unless there was some safeguards that we were going to actually remove some of the illegally carried guns in the UK. And so I think it's a very difficult, very tricky situation. And I think that just enabling people to buy a gun to defend themselves would not have improved the situation 2 weeks ago. It might have scared some people away. It may well have done. It may well have made some people feel more secure in their homes. But the thought of some of those rioters running around with guns, illegal or legal, really fills me with fear, because it was a pretty scary situation on the streets of the UK 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely. Matt Rutherford with Shoot Clay. Thank you so much, sir, for being a citizen journalist and covering this story as well as you did. And
I told Matt before we got on the air, I couldn't find this anywhere else except for his blog last night. And I said, it just like here in America, the bloggers, break the news.
Yeah, and it's citizen journalism is a great term. And believe me, Matt, if it's a story's going to be found, Cameron Gray will find it. And yours was the only one he could find. So thank you, sir, for your work, and thank you for being with us on NRA News and Cam and Company.